Komets Corner is presented by Lee's Famous Recipe.
The rebound in front of that. Komets picking up Dugan all alone. Dugan going to be on a breakaway. Coming in with a game on his stick. He comes in, he shoots, he scores! Cactus Jack with the heady, and the Komets win it!
That was Shane Albahrani on the call. This is Shane Albahrani in the studio for our new edition right here of Komets Corner. And man, Shane, is your voice okay? Because you had to call a lot of goals
I got
this
into that one right there. That was not a bad one.
Yeah, you really leaned into that. And, obviously the overtime winner from Jack Dugan on Sunday, we're going to go through each single game and break down those highlights. Yeah. But when you take a look, before we go into the minutia of it all, when you look at this weekend as a whole, 3 wins in 3 games. What did it mean for this Komets team?
It was much needed, a much needed confidence booster, because last weekend was a bit of a disaster. You lose a game against Cincinnati and Kalamazoo, two of the worst teams in the Central Division. So they needed a good bounce back, and I think and winning 2 close games, because Komets are 8-1-1, I believe, in 1-goal games, and then you had a blowout at home on Saturday, which is also something that was desperately needed to show the fans, hey, that we can come in there and we can put a lot of goals up on the board. So it was a much needed weekend. Yeah,
and you mentioned that winning at home in such a decisive fashion on Saturday night. How key was that? Because there have been some home games where you're kind of scratching your head if you're a Komets fan, and to do that, certainly, especially when you had a good crowd and people back home and thinking, what am I going to do for the holidays? To put on a show in front of the crowd had to be, timing's pretty good too.
Yeah, no, that was also much needed. We talked about it last week that, players come in a little intimidated because, they want to play really, really well for the best teams in minor league hockey, or the best fans in minor league hockey. So they come in and play a little tight, So it was nice to have a good weekend, 2 wins at home, and again, 8 goals up. You put on a show. Hopefully that's going to bring more people out to the barn.
And Jack Dugan, his performance over the weekend, he had a goal Saturday, obviously 3 on Sunday. What was it like? Because his numbers, from what we were used to last year, had been a little down this year, but it's nice to kind of see him flip the switch and put some pucks in the net this season.
Yeah, he was the team's leading scorer last year. I think he ended up 4th in the league in scoring. The points were there. He's picking up assists. He just wasn't finding the back of the net. So it was nice to see him. I think he had 14 shots this weekend. It was nice to see him come out just shooting the puck and having the hat trick on 3 breakaways too. That's also something that's also pretty cool and nice for the highlight zone.
Yeah, makes our job pretty easy. Makes
our
job pretty easy. And also it gives you confidence, if you have to go into shootout later in the season. I mean, he's kind of been in those type of situations. Let's take a look at Friday's highlights. You make a trip to Bloomington. It's an exhibition game as you take on the Bison. This is, as we were talking about, not an unfamiliar place for you guys who've been with the Komets for a while.
Yeah, it's the first time in 12 years since we've been back to Bloomington. They were the Bloomington Prairie Thunder in the IHL, and in the CHL they're the Bloomington Blades. So no one else had been there, but I kind of knew the lay of the land getting back to that arena, and it was a good, it was a 2-1 win. It was a win that you had to grind out. It went down to the very end, and Brett Brochu, man, he was really the story really of the weekend, because he's showing that he is one of the best goaltenders in the league, and it really showed this weekend, especially late in that game Friday in Bloomington.
Yeah, Nick Deacon Poot, it must be fun being able to pronounce Deacon Poot every once in a while. He gets a goal. Alex Eliardi gets a goal. And you mentioned Brett Brochu with 27 saves on 28 attempts. So what was it that really impressed you? And how did they use that as a springboard for the rest of the weekend? Because, you win a game on the road like that, you get the weekend started off right.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting that Coach Jesse Kalicki went back with Brett Brochu Saturday night after the win Friday, and with the travel, and decided not to go with Connor Unger because I think he was the hot hand, and then you were playing a team in Allen who unfortunately set an ECHL record Friday night for the fewest shots in a game with only 7.
Wow!
So they came into that game for Saturday in Fort Wayne, I'm sure, they were pretty pumped up. They wanted to erase the memory of the 6-0 blanking they had in Cincy the night before. So I think Jesse Kalicki kind of sensed that. It's like, hey, nothing against Connor Unger. He's been improved over the last 3 or 4 games, but Brett Brochu has got a little more miles under him and a little chip on his shoulder as well. So he needs to go in there with a little bit of attitude, and they did. And Allen came out firing on Saturday night, but the Komets blitzed him, 8 goals. But I thought that was a really good coaching move by putting in Brett Brochu on Saturday.
Yeah, let's take a look at some of those highlights from Saturday night. We've got a lot to pick from.
Yeah.
But as you mentioned, is that one of those things, you mentioned what a coaching move it was, is that one of those things that maybe Jesse might not have done last year, or maybe second-guessed himself last year, and this year, because he does have that year of experience under his belt, makes it easier for him to say, you know what? I know what I'm doing. Like, I'm going to make this move, and it's going to work.
I don't know. I don't think anyone knows what we're doing, and I don't think that Jesse would say that either.
Just like television.
Yeah. But no, I think it was a hunch. I think he just kind of said, hey, these guys are going to be fired up. I need someone in there who's gonna play with a little bit of chip on the shoulder, and that's what Brett Brochu did, and he played great. I mean, we scored 8 goals, but it still was not easy for him on Saturday.
Svetlikov back. I mean, this guy was a machine. The 2 games he played earlier in the season, 6 points. He was averaging 3 points a game when he came down this weekend. What does he bring to the table? Because, I mean, he just seems like a sniper. He's instant offense for you guys.
Yeah, he's one of those guys that is, he's just one of those borderline guys. He's either going to be, in the AHL or a very top guy in the ECHL. So he's just kind of in a weird place for him, because when you watch him play and you see him in practice, you're like, why is he down here? I mean, that's how good he is, and he is a game changer. So it's nice to get him, because the Komets lost Ethan Keppen to a call up to Chicago. So then it's kind of like a wash right there, because Ethan Keppen was tearing it up. So it was nice to get Svetlikov back, because it kind of balanced out the loss of Ethan Keppen.
With Svetlikov, is there a guy that he reminds you of that we've had in the past here in Fort Wayne? Is there a guy that he really mimics or has a similar game to?
He's a great power forward. His game is kind of similar to Ethan Keppen, but I think of a guy like Matt Szerzynski back in the day. Garrett Thompson is a big, strong, tall power forward, and that's something the Komets kind of lacked last year. So having him in the lineup is great, and then once you get Ethan Keppen back, man, if you can keep these 2 guys together, that's going to be a great 1-2 punch.
Nolan Voken would also, put one in on Saturday night. How nice is it to see him in a Komets uniform and putting the puck in the back of the net?
Yeah, that's the guy who just had some rotten luck this year, and it's a fact where you can just he has to laugh it off, because a couple weeks ago in Cincinnati, he had an empty net chance. He had the puck at the blue line all alone, and his stick broke. I've never seen that happen in my life, a stick break with an empty net, and you just had to laugh. And it was good that he was able to get one in there, and he's another guy who just absolutely grinds. He's coming off a pretty serious knee injury, so it's taken him a few months to kind of find his stride, but now I think he's found his spot.
And you were talking about how Allen wanted to come in and erase Friday's performance, but they go 0 for 5 on the power play. So the penalty kill for the Komets was 10 for 10 this weekend.
Yeah.
How key is that? 'Cause people talk about how their power play is playing this season. They don't talk about the penalty kill. It was absolutely on point this past week.
Yeah, the Komets have killed off 18 straight power plays on the road. I think 13 straight now overall. And finally got their first shorty of the year. Jack Gorniak put that in on Saturday night, and Gorniak, I think, was tied for the league lead in power play and shorthanded points last season. So that's kind of his game. That's where he likes to find points. And yeah, it was great to get that first shorthanded goal. But no, the penalty killing has been outstanding. And then we had to kill off a 5-minute major early in the game on Saturday. So it even makes it kind of more impressive that they only scored 2 goals and didn't score any on that penalty kill, because Yannick Turcotte went off for a 5-minute major for boarding. So that's really 2 weekends in a row the Komets have to kill off. So that's 10 minutes of power play time, only giving up 1 goal. That's pretty impressive.
And Brett Brochu, 31 of 33 in goal on Saturday night. You mentioned that was back-to-back games for him. Pressure-type games to go on the road and win a 1-goal game and then come back home and face an Allen offense that was ready to snipe.
Yeah.
And was ready to put, Friday in the rear view. So, again, you alluded to it earlier, just Brett Brochu's performance, not only throughout the course of the weekend, but over the course of the season. It's really been fantastic.
Yeah, he's a guy who's got something to prove. He had amazing numbers in juniors, played in the World Junior Championships, and somehow went undrafted. And I think he has taken that into his pro career, saying, everyone underestimated me. And last year he comes in, he was the third wheel, and he knew it, and he understood his role. He wasn't going to play much with 2 affiliated goaltenders down here in Fort Wayne. So, he took that role, and he just wanted to be the best teammate he could be. And when he played, he was going to play great, and he did. He he played wonderful last year, and then that earned him not only a contract with Bakersfield, but it earned him a spot on the big club. You know, he got to play an exhibition game with the Edmonton Oilers. So if that shows you, man, he went from undrafted to actually playing in the big time. You know, he's got something to prove, and he's got a lot of talent. I can see just the improvements already this year. He's proving that he's one of the best in the league.
Okay, so he gets a win on Friday on the road. He gets a win Saturday at home. On Sunday, he gets to pop up the skates and just relax, ice, stretch, do all that good stuff. Let's take a look at the Sunday games as highlights as Connor Unger steps in at the goalie position for Jesse Kalicki. And heading into this game, did you feel like this team was just on a roll? Or what was the feeling, the atmosphere around it? Because, you know, an 8-goal Saturday night, you don't want there to be any hangover to Sunday.
Yeah,
especially on a 3-game weekend.
Yeah, that's always, that was a real concern of mine, actually. Before I even went on the air, I kind of said that to my broadcast partner. I got a bad feeling here tonight because, again, you got a team that had lost 5 or 6 straight now up to this point, and they want to go home with a win. And this is our 3rd game in less than 72 hours. You had some travel, so, you know, the legs are going to be a little heavy. So I'm like, ooh, this feels like a trap game. They fell behind, but they came back to win in the 3rd period. The Komets have been a terrific 3rd period team. So once you got the game tire, I felt a lot better. I'm like, okay, we got this game, but then you give up one late. You go to overtime. The Komets have been very good in overtime, and didn't last very long, 55 seconds. Jack Dugan nets the game winner. Yeah,
you mentioned the Komets being a good 3rd period team. Komets are decent in the 1st period, too. It's that 2nd period, you know, talking to a lot of fans, they're like, man, sometimes I wait until the 2nd period to go get my candy and my popcorn and all that because the 2nd period hasn't been necessarily kind, especially at home. But just really, how do you, when you have those performances where they're staggered like that and one period just doesn't seem to be clicking, how do you flip the switch if you're Jesse Kalicki and be like, I don't know what it is about this period, but like, we got to be better.
Yeah, you know what? I think every team has a bad period. If you go and you look at the stats, you know, some teams the 1st period is horrible. Some teams it's 3rd. For us, it's the 2nd. So there's not going to be a perfect game for anybody. So the 2nd period seems to be the time where, you know, even you look at Saturday night, Komets scored 5 straight goals, nothing in the 2nd. They gave up 2. Suddenly going to the 3rd period, you're a little nervous because now it's a hockey game, you know, at a 3-goal deficit. But they came out, again, firing in the 3rd period and took care of business. But, you know, you get those lulls, you know, again, teams like to come out strong, like a Toledo team. They're really good in the 1st period. You know, they like to get teams on their heels right away, and then they like to play defense the rest of the time. So the 2nd period, I don't get it either, but it's one of those times where, you know, teams make their adjustments in that 2nd period. So, and the Komets have been able to fight through things in the 2nd period and have great 3rd periods.
The big come away for most fans on Sunday would be obviously Jack Dugan's hat trick and the game winner in overtime. But Anthony Petrozelli also scored in that game. He scored on Saturday night. How key has his return to the Komets been and his leadership and everything that he brings intangibles-wise to this team so far this season?
Yeah, no, you know, Petey is great. You know, he's a true Komet. You know, with not having Sean Sidlowski. You know, and you go back to the Kaylee Schrocks and all these guys. Every team has the one guy, the one guy who's a true Komet. You know, who has been around. And you know, we didn't have him last year. You know, and I think we felt that not having his leadership. And you know, Petey's not going to score any pretty goals. You know, he's there to camp out in front of the net and get the garbage and pop it in. And
which is great.
You need that guy. You need that guy.
Yeah, because he's not a big dude, but like he loves to scrap. And he's had, you know, such a great history in terms of being healthy. You look at this guy and the way he plays, you think, man, this guy's going to get banged up and hurt all the time. Not so.
Yeah, no, I think Petey's gone 9 years with only missing 1 game, and it was last year when he was with Indy. So, no, he's incredibly durable. You know, he was set to actually break the record for all-time consecutive games played if he had come back to Fort Wayne last year, and unfortunately that didn't happen. But I certainly have given him a lot of grief about that because I really wanted him to break that record that stood for 60 years. So, but no, it's great to have him back. You know, he's a great dressing room guy. He's a great guy in the community as well. So he's a guy, if you want him to do anything, ask Petey. You know, that's why he's just a terrific human being.
And when you take a look at Connor Unger's performance, 20 of 23 in goal. For him to be your number 2 guy, there's a lot of places where he might be a number 1. He's been pretty good this season. What is it that you've seen from him that you like about Connor Unger that you can build off of for the rest of the season?
Just his confidence is growing.
Yeah.
You know, he gave up a goal on the first shot he saw opening night in Iowa, and you could tell right from there things were just not right in his head. He's just trying to learn the game. He's just learning to be a pro. And you've seen him grow over the last 3 or 4 games. He's starting to put it together. I mean, Edmonton saw enough of him to give him an NHL contract out of Brock University, and that stuff doesn't happen very often. But so another guy, undrafted, maybe got a little bit of an attitude about that. So no, you can see him. He is starting to just get a little more comfortable and with his game, with his teammates, and with the skill he's facing every night. Because talking to Brett Brochu last week, he said the ECHL is getting a lot better. It's better already from what it was last year. So the skill level is getting better, and there is some terrific goaltending in this league. Every team has got a number one who might play at a higher level, but is usually lights out. We saw that with Cam Johnson in Florida. Jonathan Lemieux in Kalamazoo, he has just given us fits for the past 4 games we've played against him. So goaltending is at a premium, and I think the Komets have got 2 really good ones right now.
Speaking of 2 really good ones, there are 2 games on the schedule for this week, both against the Indy Fuel. Let's take a look at the games that are coming up Friday. It's the Indy Fuel at the Komets again, 7:30 start in Fort Wayne, and then Saturday you play down in Indy at the Fuel. Indy comes in 4th in the Central Division standings. You guys are 2nd. Toledo 1st, but they've got 3 games on you, which obviously is pretty big. So when you take a look at this Indy team, what do you know about them? What are going to be some of the keys to having another successful weekend and carry over the momentum that you got after 3 wins this past weekend?
Yeah, this is going to be interesting. They have a new building, so we're going to go down to Fisher's and play in their new barn on Saturday night. So that is going to be interesting. But this is a team that we don't know what they are yet because they didn't open their building until the middle of December, till actually last week. So this is a team that was on the road for basically 8 weeks of the season. So they weren't real comfortable. They were having trouble scoring goals. They had great defense. They still have great defense. So great goaltending. So this is going to be a fun weekend and to see really what the Fuel are all about, because they got off to a slow start because they played everything on the road. But now they're starting to find the momentum. They've got some wins, and here they are creeping up the standings. So it's going to be 2 important games. It's going to be 4 important points coming up next weekend.
Yeah, and as we wrap things up, what are you most looking forward to this weekend? Is it going down and seeing that new building?
Yeah, for us
no more State Farm Coliseum down there?
You get a little sad because, you spent so much time in that building, and with it closing up, the Coliseum is now the oldest building in minor league hockey. I think the Fairgrounds Coliseum had us by a year or 2. So it's kind of sad because we spent so much time down there, even as a kid growing up, going down to see when they were the ice, back in the day.
I went to those games.
Exactly. So no, it's a little sad, but it's also exciting to get into a new building in Fishers and see where the sight lines are, when you're a broadcaster. And I think now with the newer buildings, they take that into consideration. So no, I'm looking forward to Saturday night down in Fishers.
Yeah, well, and, those barns are going away. Kalamazoo's days are numbered up there. The old school feel is changing, but change is good sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it certainly can be. I'm sure it's good for the broadcast and technical side of things, which you definitely do not mind. But for this week's show, he's Shane Albahrani. I'm Glenn Marini. Thanks for logging on to Wayne.com for this week's edition of Komets Corner. We'll see you next Monday.
Komets Corner is presented by Lee's Famous Recipe.